Welcome to Beyond the Lines. I'm here with Canadian ex-punk musician, journalist, and book author, Jim Algie. Hey, Jim.
Thanks, Keith.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Jim, let's start with your punk music days. How did you get into being a punk musician and start your band?
Well, I got interested in music and literature about the same time with Edgar Allan Poe and Alice Cooper, the original shock rocker. But when I was about 12, but there was no chance to play, really. You know, there was no live original music at the time. You go to see a arena rock band or a tribute to Pink Floyd. So when I was in high school, all the other kids there, the other guitarists, they wanted to learn either Stairway to Heaven or Sultans of Swing. That was about it, you know. I wasn't going to...
Wasn't edgy enough for you.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to go to music school for 5 years just to learn that. And then the Ramones came out, and the Sex Pistols and the Clash. So that's pretty much where we all started. You listened to it and thought, I could play that. And that was very much the original inspiration, you know. People started just forming bands in their basement. You get together and somebody would know Blitzkrieg Bop or Sheena's a punk rocker, or God Save the Queen by the Pistols. So we started out playing those songs and then just slowly started writing our own songs. But the big moment came when walking into a music shop expecting the usual, you know, Jimmy Page wannabes, and there's a guy sitting on an amp and looks exactly like Joey Ramone, same haircut, vinyl leather jacket, and he's playing Teenage Lobotomy and songs. So I went up to him afterwards, Dale Moselick, I should give him a shout out, and said, hey, that's really cool. I'm trying to make a band with my brother who's a drummer. Do you want to come over and jam? So he comes over. I'd had a bass for about a month.
So you were playing bass?
Couldn't play dick all. And, and Dale quickly sat down and taught me Shock Treatment by the Ramones and Kill That Girl from their second album. So that was pretty much the starting point. That was punk rock 101 for all of us.
Jim, were you writing at that time? Had you started your career, or had you been writing articles or anything at that time?
Yeah, when I was 12 and got into Edgar Allan Poe and Alice Cooper, I suddenly decided that I would start ripping off kind of Alice Cooper lyrics and sort of setting into his music. I found one a while ago. Title was Dark Moon, Scary Moon. I'm thinking, wow, it's kind of the horror stuff I would later be attracted to. And I stayed in my bedroom one summer, wrote out a novel all by hand, which is about the Indy 500 motorsports race, which I was obsessed with as a kid. So they both started really about the same time and kind of fed off each other.
So your influences in writing had its breeding ground in music, predominantly edgy and punk music, but later to be, as you became more refined, you started writing a lot of other different subjects and stuff, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. I expanded into, well, you know, some of the travel guides here, books, sustainable development, wildlife, environmental issues, kind of the horror, supernatural Thai stories, and the Phantom Lover and other thrilling tales of Thailand, and some other crime scene books.
Kind of got darker and darker, didn't it, over the years?
I mean, over the years, but at the same time...
I mean, you seem like such a nice guy, but you know, I've read some of your books.
Yeah, but I can still see, you know, the sort of Alice Cooper and Edgar Allan Poe imprint on a lot of that stuff that started very young. Yeah.
No, before we get to your Thailand-based stuff, I mean, tell me about your latest book, because it is connected to. It's very historic, really, and iconic.
Yeah, on the Night
Joey.
Yeah, on the Night Joey Ramone Died, Tales of Rock and Punk from Bangkok, New York, Norway.
You must have been devastated when you heard the news.
Yeah. I mean, really. Well, as I said in the story, you know, the main character is kind of now fading rock star, forced to produce boy bands. Here's the news in the studio when he's recording what he figures might be the worst album ever recorded in pop music history, with a really incompetent boy band singer. Yeah.
Just the irony of it.
And you know, when he hears the news, he remembers like growing up on an American military base with his Thai family and hearing some of the older soldiers talk about the day that JFK died or was assassinated, and they never forgot that time or place. So, like I said, the Ramones' influence looms so large for punk and new wave musicians was a starting point. So for him, yeah, it is devastating, but it forces you to reevaluate your priorities. And also at one point he says, you know, when your musical heroes start dying of terminal diseases rather than overdoses, this is a warning sign, you know, which kind of precipitates a whole midlife crisis in a youth-obsessed business where you're trying to get back your mojo and start writing again and making new albums and everything. What do?
The glamour of sleeping in the back of a very flimsy high-ace van on top of speakers and Marshall amplifiers with, you know, rods sticking in your back and, you know.
Yeah,
great
that's
stuff. Glamorous.
Yeah, that the romanticism pretty much faded. By the last tour we did of Europe, which was when I quit when I was 28, and ended up at our last show in Berlin in a squat, falling backwards off the side of the stage in the middle of the song, completely wasted. And I mean, if it hadn't been for these punks, they reached up, grabbed me on top of their hands, flung me back on the stage. I only missed about 5 or 6 notes, took a bow, crowd went mental, thought, oh, the bass player's stage diving. And but I thought, you know, having a near-death experience on stage, this is the perfect time to get out.
So Jim, from your rock and roll years and falling off the stage in Berlin to Bangkok, Thailand.
Yeah, I mean, first there was the stopover in Barcelona for a couple of years working and writing there, which got me back into writing again. But then when I decided to move east, you know, looking for more story ideas and just outlets for publishing. So it was super hard to break into journalism back in Canada. Got here and there's a little paper called Thailand Times, which was hiring just about anybody off the street who was a native speaker. So a lot of opportunities in Thailand that you wouldn't have had back in the West. And I think that's true, whatever your profession or vocation might happen to be. So at the time, I mean, I was looking around for other stories to do pre-internet, and you know, seeing things in Lonely Planet, the forensic museum where the bodies of several mass murderers are housed, and some crime scene exhibits. End of story. Well, what's the rest of that story? So I went over there and ended up finding about Thailand's most infamous serial killer, a Chinese cannibal who was on the loose in Chinatown in eastern provinces around the late 50s, and thinking, well, that would be a really interesting story. And then seeing his naked, preserved corpse in the museum, which is something I had never expected to see.
Where is this museum?
It's over in Siriraj Hospital, one of the, I believe, the original hospital in Thailand across the river, along with a couple of other preserved bodies of mass murders and all sort of crime scene photos, murder exhibits. And I like the kind of rawness and edginess of Thailand at that time, which I found quite inspiring to write about, and the fact that so many of these stories hadn't been covered. So yeah, that was definitely part of the ethic or the interest at the time. And then through doing some of those stories and working at The Nation and doing a regular column on it, I came to meet Thailand's last executioner. And it was a former rock and roll musician himself and guitarist who played around the GI bases. So we bonded over Elvis and Hank Williams. And you know, he kept an acoustic guitar in his office. We traded back, play some surf
and torture instruments.
And but you know, who would have thought really that you could even meet such a person, get access to them, interviews and everything, and get the whole story between a man who executed 55 inmates
Yeah, I kind
over
of figure
20 odd
most
years.
people would kind of like to preferably not meet him ever.
Yeah, yeah.
Readers of the future, do the young generation or the generation today read books?
Yeah.
And where do you think the business is going?
Yeah, this is the big question these days. I remember there's a famous article going around a few years ago called "Does Google Make You Stupid?" And the writer, when he's talking about it, I used to go scuba diving in a sea of words. Now I just skim the surface, reading headlines and little text messages and everything. I think that's true for a lot of people, even amongst a lot of the journalists I know. They talk about Game of Thrones, they talk about Breaking Bad, they talk about TV shows and that, and books don't really figure into it a lot of the time. But then recently I read a story in The Guardian where it said ebook sales were down by about 20%, and actual print paperbacks had come back by about 10%. There's a bit more sense now with the new generation. I think the book is a tangible, perfect piece of interactive technology as it is. So reading, I think, yeah, there was a quote I read, is an act of rebellion in an age of distraction.
Jim, any aspirations to go back on the road? play music again? In Bangkok,
Well,
in Thailand, or touring?
myself and my doppelganger, Blake Cheetah, that was my stage name, who was known as a bit of a
Blake
wild
Cheetah,
man.
what-
Blake Cheetah, yeah.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, I don't even, yeah.
Cheetah. Okay.
Probably marijuana, I don't know.
Blake
But,
Cheetah, I mean, it sounds-
yeah, Blake Cheetah, yeah.
Oh, Blake Cheetah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
yeah.
Blake Cheetah.
But,
Fantastic.
yeah, I mean, over the years, I still try to keep a hand in the game by writing some Bangkok songs and everything. So at some point, yeah, I've always wanted to go down and actually put those on a whole album
Yeah,
and
you should,
everything.
absolutely
So,
should.
but yeah.
Again, they become part of history, especially of our expat history. You know, expat. You could say after all these years, with all the people that have been here for so long, there is an expat culture, and that's even changing.
Oh,
But you know, you're certainly you are a big
Definitely,
part of that,
yeah.
a contributor to that.
But yeah, I thought it'd be cool just to do a final swan song, like long after all my other bandmates have retired, you know, kind of be the last man grandstanding at the end. So,
And then
yeah.
have a little release and send them all a link to a free download. Jim, last question. Thank you so much for being on the show. Hypothetical scenario. We go to a bar in the early afternoon, and the bar is full of vinyl records behind the bar, and alcohol obviously, and the bartender, you walk up to the bar and the bartender says, "What can I get you?"
One bourbon, one scotch, and one beer. Then I'd request that song by John Lee Hooker.
Thanks for being on the show,
All right,
Jim.
thanks, Keith.
Great talking to you. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all again soon. Thank you so much.